Well, hey y'all, welcome to the Dear Jami podcast, where we talk about people's stories, their secrets and conspiracies, and really just invoke thought and emotion uh, in some things that we may not get to do every single day. Tonight's episode is loaded because y'all have been reaching out incredibly. I tried to squeeze as much as I can into tonight. Just know that if you don't hear your story tonight, or if things, if you don't like this version of the Dear Jamie podcast, that Saturday evenings, we also go live with the Scandalous Saturday, which is the version that I choose to save for the weekends. Tonight is quite the mix of everything from all walks of everywhere. And without further ado, let's get started. Okay. You ready for this? Dear Jamie, when I was 12, I stayed at my grandmother's house in rural Kentucky for a summer. It was the kind of house that always felt cold, even in July, and she kept every clock covered with lace doilies. They trapped the spirits, she once said, like that was a normal thing to believe. One night, I woke up around 3 a.m. I know because the old grandfather clock in the hall had just struck 3 times, though my grandmother swore it hadn't worked in years. I had to use the bathroom, so I tiptoed down the hall, trying not to wake her. When I passed the sitting room, I saw a figure in the front window. It was a woman just standing there inside the house, looking out. She was dressed in this outdated, high collared black dress, and her hair was in a tight bun. She didn't move. I froze. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a reflection, a statue. But then she slowly turned her head and looked straight at me, directly into my soul, as you would say. I ran back to bed and hid under the covers until the sun came up. The next morning, I asked my grandmother if we had visitors that night. She said, "You saw her too, didn't you?" And nothing else. Years later, I went back to the house after she passed. While packing her things, I found an old photo album, and there she was, the woman, standing next to my great great grandmother in a photo labeled the Morning Guest, like Moruning, guest, 1904. I still don't know what I saw, but I've never forgotten it. Why am I so scared of this moment and continue to relive this moment? I've always heard that kids can see things that we can't and can interpret things. It even goes to that, if you remember that movie, The Sixth Sense, where they sort of interpreted what people think and saw and then really through the eyes of a child as well. And I've always been told that kids can see things, and it's interesting that of all the times that you stay at your grandmother's house, this is one of the you know greatest memories. And for that to live so long inside your head and then to go back to be cleaning stuff out and see that same picture, I can't imagine the haunting feeling of that moment. But I do believe in spirits and ghosts, and believe that that we're visited. Maybe they are not mean or have any ill will. It doesn't sound like this person had any ill will. um I would wonder if you have any, other siblings or any other kids that spent the night in that house who also saw that person, because it's very hard in these stories to think about all the context around them and to try to imagine and think about all the questions that I would ask this person. Like, did you tell anyone else? Were there any other siblings? Did anybody else ever see any of this? Because obviously this person, she was 12 years old, she says, and now as an adult and having to go back and go through her grandmother's things and seeing that picture, like all of those memories had to come flooding back. Crazy. But I imagine that there are a lot of people who have experiences similar to this. And I would just assume also that, I shouldn't assume, I believe that people visit us for a reason. And who knows what that reason is? Maybe your siblings or other people would be able to ask, you'd be able to ask those questions and to be able to kind of go through that as well. Interesting. Very interesting. All right. Story number 2. Yes, it's a 2-pager. Okay. Dear Jami, I was young and he was my first. He looked like a rock star. It was the very early 80s, and I was mesmerized by his look, his walk, his talk. He had the 80s rocker hair, and so did I. We became friends, then became more, and I wanted to marry this man. But tragedy struck my health, and we became estranged for many years. I moved on and married, so did he. Over the years, I followed his famous band on tour. Actually saw them live once, but he never knew. Yep, he made it the big time. I'm sure you've seen him play. The last year of the century, he ran into a friend of mine and he asked for my number as he was divorced. And my friend said, so was I. She said no, but she would give him, it's written wrong. She would give his number to me. We went to dinner that night and bam, together again, married for 15 years. His stupidity and my pride and stance on marriage caused divorce, but we could never really stop thinking of each other. Heck, we held hands both in tears in court in front of the judge at our divorce hearing. The judge said he'd never seen anything like it. Divorce granted. I moved on, but never found that person that could come close. He did too, just finding people to fill a void. We would catch up once or twice a year and have coffee, code for Netflix and chill. I'm not making this up. Or we would sit in a corner booth at a restaurant and just hold hands and catch up. He remarried. I found a great guy, another who I was also friends with when I was younger, who after being together with ended up in the hospital and a pacemaker and then passed away less than a year later. Fast forward to 2019. My ex and I are still in touch. He's still married and he stops by my house to say hello. I knew we were in trouble from the minute I opened the door. Cologne on, dressed up with a white, crisp, cotton button-up shirt, Wrangler jeans, and his boots. Lord, I was a wreck. We sat and reminisced as usual, laughed a lot, and ended up wandering to my room. Ugh, of course it was spectacular as always. He was never a needy guy. He was a giver. But something was different this time. It was almost too strong of a connection between us. We both knew we were doing something very wrong as he was still married, but this was dangerous territory and we could both feel it. We didn't speak for almost a year after that night. I ran into him at a county fair and we both just smiled at each other. He texted later to say that he cried after seeing me earlier that day, and he had a nervous breakdown after we were together that night because he couldn't manage his feelings. He ended up telling his wife. He told her everything, and yes, she knows of me. He told her that he loves her, but that he's loved me since I was 17 and that it just doesn't go away. So, from that point on, we decided we couldn't be Facebook friends. He ended up actually being admitted to an inpatient space in the hospital to be able to work through his mental issues. And needless to say, I have been single for the past 4 years. I still think about him. He's in my phone, but I know we can never talk or see each other again. I say happy birthday to him via the universe on his birthday every year. I'm always going to miss him. It's like this empty space that can't be filled by anyone else. And I think I'm okay with that. I'm good single, and maybe we can be together again in our next life. But I can't help but wonder, do you think he's feeling the same way? Whoo! Okay. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack here, okay? Like a lot to unpack. So, being connected to somebody that is chemical, because this to me was like a extremely chemical connection that has some things in it that are just like unexplainable, and that nobody had any willpower to refrain from. It is very sad to me because what I feel like is that this person, this man, found himself in a situation where he truly was torn, and that actually affected his mental health so greatly. And then this woman who's like trying to be the person that knows that connectivity just creates horrible things, and her willpower must be like off the charts, and to be able to hold back knowing that her feelings are the exact same. It's almost like The Notebook. Like, the chemistry and connection between those two surpassed every other thing. People's opinions, all of the right from wrong, all of it. And that's what I feel like about these two right here. And I am proud of her for knowing that together is not an option, and for recognizing that no matter how wonderful things are, that that you can't invoke something like that to disrupt so many other lives. And that is like a very, I don't want to use the word majestic, but that's a strong woman right there, to put everything else in front of her own wants, desires, and everything clearly that her body is telling her. And when I think about that man, and I think that every woman has had someone in their life that they have had the connection with that was chemical, and probably even someone that they shouldn't be with. Um, and when I think about him, it seems that he didn't have the same willpower to say no, although he had a conscience and could go back and confess things to his wife. And there's a lot to be said about that as well. I just feel sorry for these people because somehow, some way, the universe did not truly want them to be together. And no matter how many times seems that they tried, it just didn't work out. And I think there's a lot of people in the world who could look to this woman and say, "You made it," because there's a lot of other people that it destroys. It can destroy your job, it can destroy your home life, it can destroy everything. But it is hard, and I'm just really proud of this person. And Jennifer says it is chemically toxic. Jennifer knows. I certainly do. Chemically toxic is a horrible place, and it's borderline an addiction. And there's no other way to explain it other than you become addicted to the way that that person makes you feel. That chemical in you, I don't know what chemical or hormone or what it is, but it is oddly only released in their presence, and it is a wild, wild feeling, and you become absolutely addicted to it. So I envy this person for her willpower after all of those times to be able to say, I'm not even going to wish that person happy birthday in real life. I'm going to say it to the universe and hope that it hears me and go from there. And believe it or not, that person probably does hear you through the universe. They know. They absolutely know. The same way that you know on your birthday that that person is doing the exact same thing. Whew. That one was borderline scandalous Saturday. I'm just saying. And when I read it, I was like, okay. It's going to be okay. All right. This next one. The title is My Mom Has Buried Everyone But Me. That is the subject line to this email, and I'm not making that up. Dear Jami, I don't know if writing this will bring me peace or put me in danger. Maybe both. My mother has always had a way of outliving people. 5 husbands, all dead. Different causes, different decades, but always sudden. One fell off a ladder. One had a stroke in his sleep. The third was hit by a car in a parking lot. The last two, one had a reaction to new medication, and the other, well, his pacemaker just stopped. No one's ever pressed charges. No one's ever asked too many questions. They all just said that she had bad luck. There's something in me, though, that doesn't believe that. Then came Grandma. My mom moved in to take care of her while she was on hospice. She refused outside help. Said the nurses were too cold, too clinical, didn't know what they were doing, didn't arrive on time. She said, I will know what to do here and I'll take care of her. 3 weeks later, Grandma was gone. When I asked about her meds, my mom looked me dead in the eye and said, she was ready. I could feel it. Jami, sometimes I wake up and she's just standing in my doorway, watching me sleep. She brings me tea I'm never going to drink. Never. She tells me things like, death can be a kindness, you know. I know I sound crazy, but I feel like she's waiting for something, watching me the way that she's watched everyone else. And I think that I know I'm next. I don't know what scares me more. The idea of her killing me, or the idea that no one will believe it when she does. What person has a track record of 5 husbands who all died and that nobody looked into? I'm just calling it out here. And let me just also say that I don't blame you for not drinking that tea. Even if you watched every single bit of her stirring that in there, and even if she's not doing it intentionally, okay, I'm going to take this to the Jami level. What if she just has this thing about her that she's not actually actively doing it, but she has this like black widow cloud about her that she just brings that upon people? And I would say that except for the whole like grandma thing, because the grandma thing is like, clearly she went ahead and gave her a pat and a push. 5 husbands? Like, okay. I've had some relationships in my life, but I can't say that I would ever get married 5 times. And if that's you, it's okay. But like 5? And then each one of them is like, let me read that again. One fell off a ladder. Was she holding it? One had a stroke in his sleep. Was she holding the pillow? The third was hit by a car in the parking lot. Was she driving it? And the last two, a reaction to a new medication. Was that reaction like because of too much? And did the pacemaker stop because she made listen. Ooh, Elle says, what about was it for life insurance? I don't know. But I can't say that I would be like all comfy with living with my mother. I guess what they made it sound like, she watches her sleep. Sometimes the universe gives you signs. Like, I see people, they're like, My grandmother was divorced 5 times. My mother was married 5 times. I'm not judging those people, but I not gonna do that. Um, but also, like, I would imagine that all 5 of those people being divorced 5 times is not being widowed 5 times. That's just too many things stacked up. And it's not even like you can have a conversation like, "Hey, mom, did you kill grandma? Did you, like, hit the dosage? Did you hold the pillow?" Like, or, "Hey, mom, tell me about what happened to Bob, your first husband, the one that fell off the ladder. Can you tell me more about that? Because no matter what, mom's got stories for all the things." And I wouldn't stay. I wouldn't stay. Mom might have her own mental health issues. It might like that them and I'm not again, I would never ever in a million years make fun of someone with mental health issues or anything like that. But even if she's not doing it intentionally and she just has the black cloud, when the universe tells you all of those things, you make changes to avoid that the same way that when I'm driving behind a log truck because I've seen Final Destination, I don't stay behind the log truck because mm-mm, no. I'm sorry for your circumstance, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I don't know that the fear and anxiety would allow me to rest. I don't know that the cautiousness that I would be taking would ever be peaceful, and I can't imagine the stress that you live in every day, worried about that. I have so many questions, and I wish some of these people could just come on and be like, "Can I ask you all of these things? You can stay in the dark. We never have to see your face or know your name. We just have questions about like, does this happen? What was your childhood like? Did this all start later in life? Like I have questions, but I would a million percent not drink that tea. And I'm so sorry that you wake up and she's staring at you because that's not comfortable for anyone in any situation. And I hope that you find space and peace, and then if she does have some mental health problems, that she gets help. Yeah. That person can write a part 2 anytime. That would be wonderful, actually. Okay. Last story of the night. Wow. I just that was a lot, actually. And the more and more I think about that, that one is haunting. Just as much as the haunting of the girl who saw the woman in her grandmother's house. That one's that was a lot. I would be at like, nobody in town asked those like, if she lived in the same town, like, I'm from a tiny little mapped out town. If that happens to 2 ex-husbands or 2 people that were under the care of the same person, you can bet whole town's talking about it, everybody's knowing about it, and everybody's questioning everything because they all know who goes where and who parks their car where. They even know when whoever got their hair done by a different hairdresser, like, the town knows. So I would be so curious to know, like, do they live in a big city where no one knows and nobody's put clues together yet? Was it the same funeral home? Because again, where I'm from, there's a funeral home and a funeral director and a coroner. Surely that can't be the case here because somebody would be asking questions. I'm sorry. This one was just more to process in general. And I would be in fear for my life too. And you have every right and to feel the way that you do. Absolutely feel the way that you do. Yeah. Jennifer Weston says 5. Yeah. Okay. Next one. This one's a little bit heavy, to be honest with you. Dear Jamie, I've never written into a show like this before, but something happened recently that's been haunting me, and I can't shake the feeling that I need to tell someone. There's a lot of haunting in this tonight's episode. A woman in my town, someone I didn't know personally, but recognized from church potlucks and the grocery store, was found dead in her home after 3 weeks. 3 full weeks. Jami, no one noticed. Not even her 3 siblings. She's only 61. No husband. No kids. Just gone. Quietly and alone. And now I can't stop thinking, what if that's me someday? I'm 58, divorced. My kids are grown and busy with their own lives. I live alone. I'm not saying I'm unhappy. I have my routines, my little joys, but that story cracked something in me wide open. It made me feel invisible, like I could vanish, and no one would even blink until my mail piled up too high or the neighbors smelled something. There's something so terrifyingly lonely about being forgotten while you're still alive. And I find myself making noise when I walk around the house, talking out loud, singing badly, just to remind myself I exist. I've started texting people just to check in, hoping someone will do the same for me. I even keep my blinds open more now, like I'm trying to signal to the world, hey, I'm still here. It's not just about dying, Jami. It's about not mattering enough for anyone to notice when you're gone. And that thought, that's the thing I'm most afraid of. Loneliness is horrible. But the thought of being so unnoticed and so invisible is a million times worse than just being lonely. And I think it's so important to find your connections. And it doesn't mean that every day you have friends that you go have coffee with or that you are calling to have these long, drawn out phone conversations. It's more so around the ability to be connected, to care enough about others who are in this situation, or to build maybe a village of people who are in like situations, divorced or maybe widowed, just to be able to check in every day. I know that since my grandmother lost my grandfather, that my mom and she send a morning text every day. And I know that my mom asked for that, and not to be overbearing or anything like that, but just to know she lives alone. And while she has a lot of visitors and a lot of people checking on her, that if you don't get that simple picture of what's going on or simple good morning, and it can be the same good morning every single day, it's a pulse check. We live in a world of connectivity, and it's very odd because I feel that we're more disconnected than ever before. And we're so concerned, the fear of missing out on videos to watch or places to be or a social status of being included, that we forgot how to truly connect with people, how to care. And when I read this one initially, I really started to think about my conversations with you all, obviously, and wondering how I could be impactful to make this difference. I feel like we've built a really wonderful community, not just around the Dear Jami podcast, but around I'm a Survivor Sanctuary and From Suits to Boots and Longhorn Lester's, where like-minded people have come together to laugh, to cry, to smile, all those things. But I also think that there's some commonalities about some of us where we don't have a lot of people who we interact with on a day-to-day basis physically. And if you don't have a partner that you're with, you may not interact with any one person specifically on an everyday basis either. And I have not looked into this to see if there's anything available, but I wish there was a free service of some sort where you could build your network, small or not, that was like a check-in, almost like they do after storms, where it's like your daily, like, so, your group of people have hit the button and said they're okay today. And when it doesn't, it alerts the rest of the group so that somebody can think further. Maybe it's a phone call that goes out. Maybe it's a text message, or I just forgot, and that person can check in, that type of thing. But also, if it gets to an escalation point, that it can alert the authorities or things like that. And I have no idea if anything exists like that. But yes, like a buddy check, or just like a being human again, to care enough about someone who doesn't have many or maybe has no one, just to be able to say, good morning, still here. And when I read this email, it actually, my mother lives alone as well. So while she's all over my grandma about checking every day, I've also been doing the same with her. And I know other people are in this similar situation. And if you have ideas on how we can form groups or networks, you don't have to be friends. You don't have to know things about each other. It's more so around the fact of just having someone to care enough to make sure that everybody in their circle has checked in today. It is sad for me to read that this woman laid in her home for 3 weeks before someone noticed. 3 siblings, grown siblings, who were probably very busy in life. And I don't know who came to notice. Was it the mail lady? Was it because her water bill wasn't paid and that was the most out of character thing about it? What if she had animals? What if she had dogs or cats in that scenario? Imagine all of those things. And I think some of the worst things would be the person who gets injured and can't reach their phone and can't scream for help because they live too far away. And I just feel like if I'm a voice for anything on this earth, if I bring anything to other human beings, it really is around staying connected, caring enough to check in on those that you know are alone. And if you're the one that's alone, it's okay to ask someone to do those things for you. It's okay to be vulnerable enough to be able to say, I live alone and I don't hear from a lot of people. I don't get out every day. I don't go to a gym every day. I don't go for walks every day or have the same loop or anything like that. I live alone. Would you be willing to just check on me? Could I just send you a text every day? And then if one day you don't get that text, could you just call the police or call me or call my very distant brother who lives all the way across I don't know. But I think it's warranted to discuss. And I think that it is important to know that it doesn't make you less of a human if you don't have people in your everyday life. My grandmother is 91. She is circling her 92nd. She is coming up on her 92nd birthday. All of her siblings have passed. Her husband has passed. All of her husband's siblings have passed. All of her friends have also passed. She has my mother, because her son also passed. She has us grandkids, and she has great-grandkids. But just as in this letter, everybody's busy with their lives, and I'm just as guilty of it. So I think it's absolutely important and okay to say, I'd like someone I'd like someone to do that for me. And what my promise is to look into resources to be able to build something to create that connectivity for those who want it. Again, it's not an invasion of privacy. It's not a, what are you doing today? Do you want to do this? Or how was your coffee? Or anything like that. It would just be a check in. So give me time to work on that. And for this woman, thank you for sharing this story, as heartbreaking and horrible as it is. Because it's a real thing. And for today, and until we figure out how and what, check on those people that are alone, or be willing and vulnerable enough to be able to say, hey, I'm alone. Would you mind doing it? I'll find a way to connect everyone in the future. And we'll go from there. Okay. That was 4 whole letters. And now we're moving on to some secrets. Okay. This one's called The Dinner That Changed My Brain. I was at a friend's cabin for a girls' weekend. Wine, charcuterie, the whole escape from reality vibe. One of the girls brought chocolates from her new boyfriend and passed them around after dinner. I had 2. They were delicious. About 30 minutes later, I started laughing uncontrollably, like belly aching, tear streaming laughter. The wood grain on the table looked like it was dancing. I felt like I could hear the stars. Turns out there were shrooms in the chocolates. At first, I freaked out. I've never even smoked weed. I'm a PTA mom. I meal prep. I own a label maker. But then it was the most beautiful night of my life. Everything felt soft and glowing, like I was wrapped in the entire universe. I talked to a tree. I cried because my wine glass was too elegant to exist. I haven't told anyone, not even my husband, and especially not any of those women on the PTA. But sometimes, when life gets loud and really hectic, I think about going back to the cabin just once more. Okay. So, as a full, most honest Jamie Walker disclaimer, I have never done a drug in my life. I've never even smoked a cigarette. I say that to you. I swear on my child, on the Bible. Yay. I have never done any of those things. I have drank alcohol. That's it. So I have no idea. But whenever she says I talked to a tree and the table was dancing, it made me giggle because I can just imagine that. And how how funny to be this like straight-laced person and then consume it and have no idea. That would be my luck. That would be my one experience if it ever happened, but I swear to you never ever ever, because I'm way too cautious and terrified that something like this would happen to me. And I have been around a lot of it. I have never been around that particular choice of substance. But is it weird that I wanna see someone else experience that? Just to have, like, I am no way condoning what happened here, and I'm realizing I'm on a very tight gray line here of discussion. But she had no stress that night. 0 stress. She didn't care one bit if her dishes were done, if the laundry was done, if she looked fat or skinny in her clothes. Like, she had a night of freedom. Freedom. And And I think that we're all envious of that moment. However, some of us are terrified of what that would be like. But if I ever had to like come encounter with that, I would only want to be a spectator purely for educational reasons. And I would really hope that it would be a moment that I could laugh about. Just saying. Just saying. That was a good secret. Not gonna lie. Thank you for that one. Okay. Secret number 2. Dear Jamie, my son thinks his dad is dead. When my son was born, I told everyone, including him, that his father had died. In truth, I just didn't want him raised by a man who had been emotionally abusive. Now he's 12 and he's starting to ask more questions. His father is still alive and he lives 3 states away. How much longer can I lie? And what will become of this situation? Okay. This goes back to the connectivity in the day and age that we live in. I don't know the circumstance of that dad. Is he in prison? Is he, is he dead to me? Is he does the dad even know? Because that's a whole other ballgame around this whole scenario. But we live in a world of DNA test. We live in a world of Facebook and background checks and social media and a way that anybody can pretty much find anybody. And if this child, this son, gets old enough and curious enough, and they find out much later in life, that's going to be a really hard thing to explain and something that he may never forgive you for because of how much of his life he missed for your own reasons. And I understand emotional abuse. I understand physical abuse. And I certainly have lived through my share of those things. And even at times regretting my life choices as to who I've selected to either be a part of my son's life or yes. However, just like my son's dad and now this son's dad, I've always believed that they have a right to know. And the thing about it is that your 12-year-old is old enough to tell you if something happens or if they're uncomfortable or all of those things. And I think that not telling him is really unfair and hard because like I said, if he grows up and he's 25 years old, it would be tragic that he had so much of his life that he didn't get to spend. And it would be easier to explain to a 12-year-old that you were concerned for his safety, for his well-being, all of those things. But now you know he's old enough and you're asking all these questions and you need to confess. Don't make up another lie to go on top of this lie. And I do have the curiosity, like, does the dad have any inkling? Was it a relationship? Was it a one-night stand? Is that, so many things. Because this day and age of connectivity doesn't allow for a lot of secrets. Not ones like that. Doesn't mean that they're going to go start spending time together or anything like that. But I do think that it would be unfair to not say anything at all. We are all over the place on tonight's flow. This next one, I'm pretty sure probably happens more than we ever hear about. This one is called the cremation mix-up. Dear Jamie, I work at a funeral home, and a few years ago there was a mix-up with the ashes of two families. The cremains were accidentally swapped, and one was already scattered before we realized it. I think about it every time I hand over an urn today, but we never told either family. So, I probably have a different perspective on this than many people. And I simply think that obviously accidents happen. But this is like one that I think would be really important to stay a secret. It is wrong. However, I think that if these two families today are at peace with what they've received and how things have been handled, it was it was the ceremonial and the symbolic pieces that brought them peace already. It was their closure. It was their emotional processing through grief. If you would go back to shed that this item was incorrect, it's a wound that you're reopening. Both of the fact that it was wrong, but of the whole death in the first place. I am by no means a professional. I don't offer legal advice. I don't all of this is my own opinion and my own thoughts and my own way of looking at the world, and I talk with you all to think through these things. But if they were telling them today that that mix-up happened, what would that solve? What would that change in any positive way for either party? I cannot think of a scenario that it brings anyone joy or peace or additional closure, or the, oh, thank goodness, I recognize that this was lighter than this, or this. You don't, if you've ever seen anyone's cremains, they look the same. And I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't happen way more often than we realize. I believe in souls, and I believe that when we pass, that the body that we were in it's a vehicle. And for me, the emotion is around the lost soul. I even think that some people's souls leave and they're, before their bodies give out, and other times people's bodies give out before their souls leave. And you can call me crazy. Yes, our souls, the body is our soul's vessel. In my mind, in my opinion. So the ceremonial way that we acknowledge death and bring closure and all of those pieces, to me, is not nearly as profound as the actual mental and emotional and the spiritual place that the grief and the act happens. So swapping those out and recognizing that it is too late is just something that I think that, I know you didn't write for advice, you're sharing a secret, but if it were me, I would take that one to my grave or my urn. Too soon? Sorry. Okay. One more secret, and then we're getting to the conspiracy. Dear Jamie, my mom had a lady who posed as a nurse on the labor and delivery floor after she gave birth to my twin brothers. That nurse tried to steal one of my brothers. She came in. She said that she was there to take the babies to the nursery to eat. She was dressed as a nurse. My mom said they just came back from the nursery and was super confused. The nurse was pretty pushy that she needed to take one of them, and my mom refused, so she left the room. When her actual nurse came back, she was asking why the other nurse was trying to tell her it was time to feed in the nursery, and her actual nurse was the one what said she was the only one on the floor that night. They called security, but never found that woman. I don't know when this was from, but today there's a lot of cameras at hospitals, specifically on labor and delivery. And as a mom, I don't know that I would ever be able to let that go. Like that would haunt me. Number one, okay, I don't mean to take this like all kinds of places. Was she seeing things? Was the mom who just gave birth delusional and seeing things? Did anybody else see this woman? Or was it a real woman who really did sneak into labor and delivery dressed as a nurse and was trying to steal a baby? All of those things are scary for me. And again, I assume that this is not in today's day and age where they can just pull up security cameras like there she was, crazy lady trying to steal babies walking down the hall. Or no one was in here, ma'am. Can we get you some water? Maybe you need some rest. Either way, wow. Just wow. All right. This brings us to Conspiracy Corner. Except for I stacked those up in the wrong place. Now, Conspiracy Corner is a place that I will remind you is a way of thinking. Keep in mind that anyone can put anything on the internet to confirm, deny, twist, all of these things. These are not my opinions. These are things that I've heard about that make me wonder and make me think. And I want to share them with you to make you think. Tonight's conspiracy theory is around Cabbage Patch babies. Do y'all remember Cabbage Patch dolls? Early 80s. I had one. Her name was Althea. I think that I got her from probably around like my 3rd or 4th birthday. She was blonde, yarn pigtails, the little pudgy nose, all of those things, right? They came with adoption papers, and every one of them had their own special name, if you remember. Because they weren't just dolls, they were adopted. And you didn't buy one, you signed for one. But let me ask you this. What if that idea wasn't just clever branding? Here's the conspiracy theory. There is a fringe belief that Cabbage Patch Kids were inspired by something much darker. An underground program or lost history involving actual children being grown, harvested, or manufactured, and adopted out without records. Some say it ties into larger Tartarian theory, and we will get into that much later, but I thought we would just dive into it. And the notion that orphan children in the 1800s were part of a cover-up involving a reset in civilization. The story goes that Xavier Roberts discovered the Cabbage Patch Kids in the late 1970s, but there's evidence he may have taken this idea from an obscure artist who claims to have visions of children coming from the earth. Some theorists believe that the whole brand was a soft disclosure, a playful mockery of a real system that trafficked undocumented children across borders and timelines. There are records of undocumented children being in train cars and just delivered. And it is wild to think about, where did they come from? What part of scientific experiment were they part of? Were they truly born and abandoned and then brought over for some experiment, which does happen, and we will talk about that in weeks to come because it's wild. But a lot of people believe that they weren't magically there, that they were in fact part of a scientific experiment. And there are a ton of old photos. I have personally seen some that show countless groups of children, young children, in cities with no adults. Some say these were the real Cabbage Patch Kids. The orphan trains, these are the ones, of the 19th century did exist, sending children across North America without tracking or parental consent. Do you know that you used to be able to send a kid via the United States Postal Service? That is not a lie or a conspiracy, that is a fact. Some people, some theorists, believe these children were repurposed to fill roles in our new society branded with new identities. It's pretty wild to think about. And when you put it all together, it makes you wonder. And seeing pictures of those kids on train cars and knowing that you could ship a child, it was like 2 cents to ship them from Chicago to Kansas City. It is wild. That is the conspiracy theory rabbit hole I would like to send you down this evening. You will find all kinds of things that contradict it. You will find all kinds of things that support it. And it is interesting and will send you down a rabbit hole. So, thank you for joining me tonight on the Dear Jami podcast for episode number 3. We will meet again on Saturday at 8 Central for the scandalous Saturday version. A little shorter, but a lot more scandalous. I'm grateful for you all, and I love you, and I hope you have a good night.